All right, Brad, we have a special show today. We have some friends here. This podcast space, it's kind of lonely sometimes.
Yeah.
But then you find a podcast that does something a little bit similar to what you do. And my thought was, oh man, we got to get these guys on. So Matthew and Ben from Giant Cocktails, their podcast, which they just debuted it this year. So we only beat them to the market by like 6 months with our podcast.
Would you call it a market? Do we have like a market share?
Yeah, like it's like a half of a percent or something.
Yeah.
But anyways, so their whole podcast is based around having a cocktail, mixing a cocktail before they talk about Giants. Kind of similar to what we like to do, though. I imagine that the cocktail that they're going to share with us that they're drinking today is a little bit more of a fancy schmancy thing than what I got going.
I'm pretty sure they're more sophisticated than us. It doesn't take much, but I'm sure they're more sophisticated. Yeah.
So what we're going to do, we're going to bring Matthew and Ben on. And I don't know if this is just kind of like the Giants gods playing with us, but all kinds of news dropped right as we're going to record. So we have all kinds of news to talk about, which is great because we'll get Matthew and Ben's take on all this stuff. But let's hit the intro video, and then we'll bring them back on here.
Bedrosian throws to Sandberg, and the pitch is grounded to second base. Thompson has it, throws to first. It's over. 27 years of waiting have come to an end. The Giants have won the pennant.
All right, we are here with Matthew and Ben, two longtime Giants fans, two Bay Area guys that, they're still out here in the Bay, Brad. You're the only one who left us.
Yeah, Reno called. The mountains called. I'm here. It's freezing in Reno. I want to be back in the Bay Area for the weather.
All right, we don't have labels, so I will just say, on your right, you will see Matthew. On your left, you will see Ben. Ben is underneath me. Matthew is underneath Brad. So let's talk, guys. I don't either of you can start, but I kind of want to hear about the genesis of this podcast, which we felt was just such a great mix and match for our podcast.
Yeah, well, I think the genesis was during COVID times, wanting to do something that was, something that was fun and that we could do together as brothers. We both live in the Bay Area, but not real close to each other, so we don't see each other very often. And so it was just, hey, let's do a podcast. And then became, what do we want to do a podcast about? And we kicked around cocktails and we kicked around the Giants and ultimately decided to do both. So that's where Giant Cocktails came from. And, Ben is the brains. I'm the brawn. That's kind of how I look at it anyway. Yeah. No pressure.
What?
Is that news?
Nobody told me I'm the brains.
Somebody's got to be them. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, well, thank you. Yes, I am the brains. This was all of my brainchild. Yeah, I mean, that's basically how it happened. Matthew said, we've been talking about doing a podcast for a while because, we were both dreaming of starting our media empire, and I said, let's do one on cocktails. And he said, let's do one on Giants baseball. And, kind of like chocolate and peanut butter. That's how we ended up here. I mean, we're both lifelong San Francisco Giants fans. So, I mean, it was a really easy transition, easy thing to do. And I mean, what's easier than drinking cocktails and talking baseball? So, and doing that on a weekly basis with your brother. I mean, I think I said this very early on in our podcast. Basically, everybody's doing this once a week. We're just recording it and letting other people listen to us. I think the most interesting thing that we discovered is that other people actually do listen to us, which is I think in the back of my mind, I always assumed nobody would. And then suddenly my voice is out there ranting and raging about Gabe Morales. I think I've eliminated myself from public office just with that one 60-minute screed by itself. So,
okay. So here's a question, because the way that baseball has sort of worked in society, is it's kind of a beer sport, right? You go to the ballpark, you get your beer. Now beer is like $20 at a ballpark. And so when Brad and I started doing this, Brad's more of a beer drinker than I am. But, we just started, drinking whiskey, and we were talking about bourbon and stuff. So why cocktails for you guys rather than beer, or wine, which is all kind of, wine is a little bit trendy as far as this kind of stuff, with podcasts. So why cocktails?
I mean, well, one is just cocktails has been a hobby of mine for a while. And what I really love about cocktails is just the creativity and how with just a few simple ingredients you can create just so many different variations. And it's something that is, I think it's really accessible, but you can get super, super creative. So there's just a really wide breadth to the hobby. And, I mean, these days, I think you can go deep into any one thing. I just went into cocktails because I love spirits. I'm just, beer is great. I love beer. I especially like Belgian beers. I will definitely drink a glass of wine from time to time, but I just think that to me, the whole world of spirits is just a much wider and more exciting, platform. And I don't know. I just think it's cooler. These cocktails are just cooler,
Especially as I get older. Like when I was younger, I used to think, wow, people who drink whiskey are a little sophisticated, right? Like anybody could have a beer, anybody can have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
But if you got like a glass with some whiskey and maybe a rock or not, or neat, like you were drinking. I really apologize for the audio only folks, because they're not going to be able to see some of the things that I'm referencing. But to me, it was like, oh, when you're an adult, that's when you drink whiskey, like when you are successful, but I think it feels to me like it's just sort of casual as you get older. But when I'm younger, I'm just thinking this is what like adults, like real adults drink is, they drink this stuff.
Right.
So.
No, kids, I'm here to tell you there's cheap whiskeys out there. You can start early. You can start real young and real cheap and work your way up to the top.
Let's start 21, okay?
Right.
So
right. See, I'm not the brains of the island.
well, Brad's got younger daughters, teenage age. I have two boys. At least my kids are two. They're 21. I also have stepkids who are younger, but my youngest just turned 21. And so we're going out to, he goes to school at University of Arizona. So we're going out to Tucson this week. And I told him, I said, okay, this is not frat stuff. Like you guys drink your beers and your hard seltzers in the dorms and on campus, but we're going to go out and you guys are going to have bourbon, or you're going to have whiskey. Like we're going to drink something that you have to sip, because you cannot just slam it. You got to taste it. So I'm looking forward to that, because, now both of them are 21 and we can go do that. But all right. This podcast is called Thompson to Clark, which shows kind of where Brad and I come into the Giants environment, the ecosystem.
Yeah.
You guys are of similar time frame when it comes to your favorite players and your favorite teams. So I'll start with Matthew, but just give the listeners an idea of where you come from when you talk about who your favorite player is, and then we'll go to Ben.
Sure. Well, my very first favorite Giants player was Jack Clark. So that gives you a little idea of how old I am. But I remember being a little kid, and just sitting in the right field section of Candlestick Park and just watching every move Jack Clark made, and just being in awe of Jack Clark. And he was the star of the Giants, and their cleanup hitter, and I just loved everything about him. And then he moved on, and so I eventually latched on to Will Clark. I guess I got to stay with my Clarks, and Will Clark to this day is my all-time favorite Giant, and just from his attitude and his his personality, and just what he meant to the Giants during the late '80s, and it was an amazing time, and it's when I kind of really fell in love with the Giants, was during that time, I think, and being a teenager, and watching the Giants finally start being successful for the first time in my life. So it was, that moment with Will Clark, I think, will always be the special one. So I always call him my favorite player for sure.
All right, putting you on the spot. Do you remember who he was traded for? Oh, I'm sorry, Jack Clark, not Will Clark, obviously.
Oh, Well, was it to the Cardinals? Was that then? No, I don't remember.
The only player in that trade that I think anybody would remember is Uribe came from that trade. But little nugget here, he was actually known as Jose Gonzalez before that trade happened. So that's how we were introduced to one Jose Uribe.
Yeah, well, Gonzalez doesn't really have the same ring as the whole stadium going, ooh, Uribe.
Yeah.
Right? That was...
All right, Ben, I know you have a different favorite player than Matthew here.
Oh, definitely have a different favorite player. I'm a little bit younger than Matthew, but I definitely remember that era. I remember the era when the Giants went from perpetually bad to good. My first favorite baseball player was
Chili Davis.
Chili Davis, that's right. I have that, but I don't really remember Chili playing. I just know that because I found many years ago, I found one of those baseball cards that you get when you play Little League. And I think it was in T-ball. I had a card, and on the back of the thing, you put your favorite player, and it says Chili Davis on mine.
Yeah.
So I know that Chili Davis was my first favorite Giant, but I really remember the Giants when it was, you got to like these kids. It was 1986, I think, was when they ran that motto out there. And it was, the year before they made it back to the playoffs in 87. And that's really when I first start remembering, loving the Giants. But my all-time favorite team, as listeners to Giant Cocktails will absolutely know, is the 1993 San Francisco Giants. I still think to this day that was the best team that the Giants ran out there on a regular basis. Although, I mean, it's hard to argue with 107 wins.
Yes.
But yeah, and my absolute all-time favorite Giant is Matt Williams. Nobody beats the Sarge in my book. Nobody runs a home run trot more pure than Matt Williams, which is really ironic because today I really love flashy. I love me a good bat flip. I love me a good stare down. I like guys who stand at home plate and watch the ball land before they start running. But somehow Matt Williams is still my favorite all-time Giant. And, I think nothing broke my heart more as a teenager or even in my whole, just realizing that the adult world sometimes does really dumb things was the 1994 season when the players went on strike and Matt Williams home run, his shot at the home run record was, cut short. And it still ticks me off to this day, but yeah.
Yeah. a lot of lost home runs.
Lost home runs. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And
So
Brad, I'll let you go for a second.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
The one thing I was going to mention is, and if he does hit 61, then his whole idea of a Hall of Fame career probably is a little bit different, right?
I think if you're the home run champion, especially if you're the one who breaks that particular record first, I think you get a huge leg up in the Hall of Fame question. Absolutely. I mean, if you just change that one season for Matt Williams, does that make him a Hall of Famer? I don't know. I think it's borderline, but
he breaks the record. The Giants probably don't trade him during that season, though that trade was very helpful for those late 90s team, but it just changed the trajectory of things. Sorry, Brad, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I have an important question. I didn't grow up with a brother. So in the backyard, when you guys are playing wiffle ball, baseball, tennis ball, we grabbed whatever we could in the neighborhood and just went out and played. So here's the important question. Since you guys are of that era, who got to be Will Clark?
Well, I was Will Clark.
Older brother, right?
And I actually, and it actually worked well because I was 5 years older than Ben. And so to make it fair, I would bat left-handed.
Oh, nice.
And so I patterned my left-handed swing after Will Clark. And so that was, we would play wiffle ball in our front yard actually all the time. And it was, since I'm 5 years older, I remember distinctly coming back from college, my first summer, and we're much older. Ben's almost in high school at that point, or about to go into high school, and we played a game of wiffle ball out in front. And this time I batted right-handed, but I remember like trying to blow a ball by him, and he launched it.
Last time we played.
I don't think it's landed yet. And he was running. He did his Matt Williams run around.
That ball is still flying. I ran around like 7 times because I was sprinting like that, head down. Just charging around. It's really hard to show up your brother when you're running like Matt Williams, though. That's the downside.
That's true. Yeah,
I think that's probably like I like me a little Fernando Tatis these days.
I must say, I think that part one trot was a little more Tatis than it was. Williams.
I think I probably watched it. I definitely.
If you run like Williams, he just thinks you're being respectful. Oh, my nice younger brother.
No. He let me know.
All right, let's move on to before we get to all this Giants news. I want to know what everyone is drinking. I will start first because mine is very boring. I just took some seltzer water. I took some ice cubes, and I took about a shot and a half of Bullet. Mixed it together a little bit, so very refreshing, but not super interesting. I think what Brad is going to tell me that he had is much more interesting than mine. So, Brad, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll let Matthew and Ben tell us what they're drinking.
Well, your drink is very Doris Day. I mean, little bourbon and seltzer, just kind of keeping it 50s. I like that.
Yeah.
I went, since in honor of our guests, I went ahead and made something up. I got myself a Manhattan. And when I make a Manhattan, I try to pick a really good rye. Right now, I have a $15 rye in the cupboard. That's all I have. It's called Riverboat, and I do not recommend it. So don't go.
I told you could start cheap.
You can start very cheap. I do not recommend it. It's not bad, but and then I've got some vermouth and the Angostura bitters in there, and I like to do a little orange wedge in there. I just kind of take the peel off the orange, twist it in there, and drop it in, and nice and simple, very refreshing.
Nice. Well, I'm actually drinking similar to Garrett. Actually, I pulled out the bourbon and the Bullet bourbon, and I kind of chuckled to myself as I pulled it out. I was like, Giant sponsor, Bullet bourbon, and I'm actually doing an old fashioned. So
nice.
And so this is a little bit of about a teaspoon or so of simple syrup with a few dashes of Angostura bitters, and then a couple ounces of bourbon over ice. And then for my garnish is I just the Luxardo cherries are my favorite part. Yeah. And so I usually just kind of savor those as the dessert of the drink, and that's what I'm drinking.
Well, I was actually a good guest, and I figured we would just, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I'm just drinking whiskey neat, and this is actually Balvenie Caribbean cask. It's 14 years. And it's real super smooth. The only other bottle I had is my 16-year-old Lagavulin, which is, it's a real whiskey.
And you're not going to waste it on these guys, right?
No, I'm not going to waste it on. No, I'm definitely not wasting it on Brad.
That is the Ron Swanson of drinks right there. The Lagavulin.
It is. It puts hair on your chest.
Yes,
it really does. It really does. It does not put hair on your head. I've tried. Honestly, it's a very, very peaty Scotch, and I only drink it when I'm feeling very, very sophisticated. Let's be honest. I only drink that when I've had a few already.
There we go.
It's but if you want to sound sophisticated and you want to sound cool, kids, that's the whiskey you tell people you drink. But right now I'm Balvenie Caribbean cask. I also love their double wood, which is aged in 2 different kinds of barrels. But they didn't have that one at the store today when I went, so just giving me some 14-year-old Caribbean cask. If I had made a cocktail, I would have made what Matthew made. So I'm glad I didn't, because then it would have been just super awkward.
So you guys on your podcast, you just go to giantcocktails.com. The website is there. Your show is there. You guys are on Apple. You're on Spotify. You're on Google. You're in Amazon. All of those everywhere.
All the places
where you
except
can find it.
YouTube, because nobody wants to look at these faces. So it's, you guys dragged us into the cameras in front of the.
I don't know. I'm kind of loving this. I'm loving looking at my face.
There you go.
I almost like looking at my face as much as I like listening to my voice.
Uh-oh.
The hard part though is when Garrett says something and I have to like look it up.
Yeah.
I try to stay on camera. It's really hard to do. Like I got to look up those numbers real quick.
I got to tell you, there's secrets to that, my friend, because I work remotely, and so I'm on Zoom all the time.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
I have mastered the art of surfing the web while looking like I'm paying attention.
I'm going to have to give you a call because
right. Well, the secret is you got to get a camera, actually a separate camera from your default one that comes in your browser, and you got to kind of put it in your computer. Yeah. And you got to put it right in your line of sight, so you're kind of staring here, but really I'm just, I'm scrolling through.
Okay, so quickly before we get to the news, just give us a couple of tidbits about what you guys do. Obviously, you talk Giants, you talk drinks. Are you also giving out recipes? Are you educating about the scotch that you were talking about? Are you educating people? So do they also get then? Not only do they get Giants, but they also get an education about cocktails in general.
Yeah. One of the things, the dynamic between Ben and I is that Ben is kind of more of the accomplished home bartender, whereas I really didn't have any experience doing that before we started this podcast. So it is a little bit of an education, learning, and talking about, the cocktail that we're bringing to that particular podcast. Sometimes they are aligned with current events or things that have happened during the game, or I think I made a milk punch actually cocktail during the season, and it was using Fruity Pebbles milk. And that was right after, if you recall, there was a double header where the guys went into they had breakfast cereal lined up in the clubhouse.
Oh yeah,
all the guys ate the breakfast cereal, and then apparently that helped them, kind of come out of their funk. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to make a cocktail with using
Darren Ruff
cereal.
hit a home run or something, and
yeah. So that's I think that's where we spend the first 15 minutes or so of the podcast, talking about our cocktails and what went into them and that sort of thing, kind of an education. And then it's all Giants after that.
There we go.
Usually it's kind of the current events, what's going on that week. Early on in the season, we really were breaking down each game, and that as in, we're trying to find our voice and kind of what we wanted the podcast to be. And as we got towards the halfway point or something, we really started talking in general themes. And I think that was a little bit more enjoyable for us, rather than kind of breaking down something that happened 5 days earlier, because we're just a once a week podcast. So just talking about the themes and what was coming up and what we were seeing was, really enjoyable for us. And I hope the listeners enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, we let the alcohol do its thing, and then we let our emotions out.
Yes,
there you go.
If you listen, yeah. But I mean, we do talk a lot about the cocktails in depth, and we've really gotten into that. So it's been a lot of fun, and we've tried a lot of interesting and different things during the season. So Matthew has been very adventurous, and and that has allowed me to make a lot of jokes about him ongoing throughout.
Did you know, for example, that you can use lemon curd as a sweetener in a cocktail?
No, you can't. I mean, one can. A skilled bartender can use lemon curd in their cocktails. Matthew, you can't.
But I did. And it was,
it was. But see,
how many people tried it? Was it just you?
We had no.
If somebody, because we do put the recipes on in Twitter and Instagram, and if people want to try them, that's great.
Yeah.
I imagine I'm probably the only one.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about making a cocktail podcast, right? It's like we don't even have pictures of these things. It's just we just talk about them, and then But yeah, I mean, we get it very adventurous with the recipes, and that's, we do want to do a little bit of education about the cocktails, but it's really about the Giants, and really about just kind of relaxing and then just letting the emotions flow.
And what a season for you to debut your show.
You could thank us now or later.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Thank you.
That's why it happened. It was all about us. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit some of the news real quick because there is a lot of it, and
It's
I
a
do
slow
want to get
news day today, right?
Yeah, nothing
Much
happened.
Yeah, nothing happened.
and I do want to get everyone's thoughts on this. So the Giants today brought back. Now they haven't announced the Alex Wood signing, as far as I could tell. They have announced Anthony DeSclafani, who Brad affectionately calls Disco, is back 3 years, $36 million. Alex Wood, the rumor that I've seen is 2 years for $20 million. So you're bringing 2/5 of the starting rotation back. Now, I joked about this earlier with Brad when we were talking. I was like, oh, great. We brought we brought our 2 number 5 starters back. But what's
mean?
Man,
they Brad had a
we brought our 3 and 4 guys for the price of our number 5.
Sure.
So,
but Brad had a great stat. Basically, who DeSclafani is he beat all of the teams that he was supposed to beat, and he struggled against some of the better teams, which that means that he was probably a little better than he's quite a bit better than average because there weren't that many great teams in baseball. He was facing a lot of teams who weren't that great, so thus he was fairly successful. Brad, what was that stat? Did you write it down?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go with basic. I like to do the ERA plus. I like to get into some of the more fan graph type of stuff, but I'm just going to keep it simple here. So Disco was 12-1 with a 1.96 ERA against teams that were under 500. Teams that were 500 or better, he was 1-6 with a 5.77 ERA. So we need improvement, obviously, on that this season. But like I told Garrett, it's fantastic for him to be back with the same coaching staff, the same pitching coaching staff, to have another 162 game season under his belt. Because remember, 2019 he was hurt, 2020 was cut short. And then so last year was his first 162 game season in a couple of years. So to have that again, that consistency, to have him back on a $12 million a year deal, I think is fantastic. I really like the deal. I'm happy for him.
And so here's my question for both of you guys, which is they brought both DeSclafani and Wood kind of in as like a, hey, we know you guys can be good when you're working, when you're going well. And we're going to give you a shot to prove it. Now, proving it is twofold in baseball these days. They can prove it and then go back on the free agent market and chase a bigger deal. Or you can prove it to your team and go like, hey, I really like it here. We won 107 games. I want to work with the same staff. I want to work with the same, well, you're not going to work the same catcher, but I like the environment.
I'm gonna
Don't
cry
worry.
now.
We're gonna get to that.
You have to bring that up.
We're gonna get to that because I know you guys
going so well.
I know you guys haven't had a chance to talk about it yet, and Brad and I spent quite a bit of time talking about it. So I want to get your thoughts on it. And then the idea is like, look, they can come back and actually improve on what they did last year. So quick thoughts, quick takes. Matthew, go first, then Ben, you can chime right in. Thoughts on DeSclafani and Wood coming back to the Giants?
Well, I first, Brad, it's T-Bone. Not Disco.
Not
all right.
Disco, unfortunately.
So,
it is.
now he's going to be here for 3 years. You got to get that right.
You were probably born in the 70s like I was. You got to go with Disco.
I feel like you should embrace Disco myself.
Is the better nickname.
Yeah, that is
he
the better
likes
nickname.
T-Bone.
I don't get
care
the
what he
T-Bone.
likes.
I don't get the T-Bone thing, but hey. All right. So T-Bone, Disco, I feel like it was a good signing. I think Farhan said at the end of the season that he wanted to keep as much of the nucleus together as possible, and you can't argue with that. I think 107 wins and how they performed as a starting rotation, and he was a big part of that. So I think it's decent money. I think I'm happy with the length of the contract. I'm happy with the average annual value. I think it's fair. I think it allows the Giants to do more in the free agent market by getting 2 starters for the same price that they would have paid Cueto. That was what his option was 22 million. So yeah, I'm a fan. And these guys are part of the team, and they already know, and I think the coaching staff knows them. So yeah, I don't see any downside at this point.
Anthony DeSclafani was better than people think he was this season. Brad, I don't want to rain on your parade, but here's the thing: the man only gave up 4 earned runs 3 times or more 3 times.
Yeah.
10. The reason why Giants fans might think he's not quite as good
because he got stopped by the Dodgers, Ben.
is because he did that twice against the Dodgers.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So DeSclafani gave up 4 earned runs or more 3 times. He did it twice against the Dodgers. He was really bad against the Dodgers, and he got destroyed by the Dodgers, giving up 10 earned runs. And you look at every single one of his other outings, he was 3 earned runs or less. I think the only downside about him is he really did seem to get into trouble late, like around like the 5th or 6th inning. He seemed to get a little bit fatigued, or maybe it was the 3rd time through the lineup effect or whatever. But that is, he did seem to struggle at that point in the game. But I think this is an absolutely outstanding re-sign. I think the big question mark with both him and Wood is, do they stay healthy? And T-Bone had a great season this year. I mean, he was the guy that was there pretty much the entire season. I think he did miss a couple of starts, but for the most part stayed off of the injured list. And I think this is an absolutely outstanding signing. And I think, as Matthew pointed out, relatively inexpensive, right? If they had taken Cueto's option, that would have been what they spent on both Wood and DeSclafani. Now, granted, that option was kind of ridiculous, but no, I'm super excited. I really am glad that they signed him. He was the one guy besides Gausman that I really wanted them to absolutely keep. So no, I'm very excited to have Mr. T-Bone Disco back.
And you have a guy who beats the snot out of bad teams. You don't cast him aside just because he has a tough time against some of the better teams, because you still have to beat those cruddy teams. If you don't, you're not in the position the Giants were last year. So you still have to have a guy like that who can come out against some of the lesser teams and dominate them. Saves your bullpen, gets you those wins. It's huge. So I think I'm totally on board with this sign, and I love it.
So here's my question for all three of you, and Brad, I'll come back to you first, which is, because of what Matthew said about Farhan's statement about trying to bring as many guys back from the team of 107 wins, does this enhance? Does it give us a better chance? Does it give us a worse chance? What do you think happens with Gausman here? Do you have a feeling about, whether or not the Giants are going to be able to bring him back?
It's tough to say. So Buster Posey's $22 million option is basically now Woods and DeSclafani's money. So that money was earmarked. Now it's going to 2 other players. I think you still have the money for Gausman. It depends on, I've seen numbers of 20 to 25 for Gausman per year. Will the Giants shell that out? I mean, how much is Scherzer going to cost? So I think you look at Gausman and you say, can we keep basically 4 of our 5 starters from last year by giving Gausman a $22 million deal a year? I think by keeping these 2 guys, I think it helps in your pitch for Gausman. Toronto's kind of making that push for him. But I think if you're Gausman, you say, well, you know what? I've kind of established things in San Francisco. I've been there the last 2 years. We kind of know the type of guy he is. He has said to Andrew Baggerly that basically, if I don't get a call from the Giants, I will be offended. I'm sure at this point they're probably in talks. The reports recently, I think today, were that the Giants were making a push for starting pitching. So I think there's a good chance in the next day or 2 we might even see Gausman re-sign with the Giants. My question is, and I don't know what you guys think about all of this. I've been trying to think of pros and cons. Is there a pro for the players or a con for the players to sign before the CBA expires and before we know the terms of the new one? Because there kind of seems to be a little bit of a rash of players signing right now versus the last couple of years where it was not before Thanksgiving, it was way after Thanksgiving. But we're starting to see a lot of guys sign before Thanksgiving. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, I think to answer that question, I think that there's absolutely a sense of urgency, I think, for some because of the unknown and how long this could last. And so, yeah, get your money now, right? And because I think for the established veterans, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of change between and the CBA. I mean, they're going to get theirs, right? I think
it's going to be the younger players,
right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that these guys have anything to like wait out. I think they would probably want to know what they're going to do. So that's probably why we're seeing a little bit of action right now. I think as far as Gausman, I think if I'm Gosman's agent, I'm absolutely putting out there that the Toronto Blue Jays are interested. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's, to hear that, it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, of course there are other teams that are interested. That's obviously put out there because they want, the Giants to step up. And I think that the Giants will. I think that there's been they put a lot of time and energy into developing Gausman, helping him through, to become the pitcher that he's become. And I think that they see that value. And they're not a cheap team. They're not going to nickel and dime Gausman. I think they're going to pay him what the market bears and what he's worth. And so I do expect him back. If he were to go somewhere else, though, it wouldn't surprise me because it's a business. But he's a West Coast guy. I mean, he's from Colorado. He likes pitching, in Colorado. He'll get that opportunity with the Giants. I think he likes being close to home. So I think the odds are good that he'll be a Giant.
Yeah, I agree. I think Brad, you made a really great point with Buster leaving. Not only do they not have to pick up Buster's option, they also don't have his buyout because he retired, right? So, so Buster clears the books entirely, which leaves just a huge. The Giants were going to exercise that option for sure. They were.
Oh yeah.
And so now that just leaves a huge amount of money that they were planning on spending available to put at other people. They've already got Belt coming back, which I'm guessing Garrett is going to have us talk about later. But the point is like the dollars are really working out in the Giants' favor right now. And so I think they can make Gausman a really good offer. And my guess is that is what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to shore up the pitching staff. And then they're going to see where they end up with the starters and go from there. So I expect them to take a really good run at Gausman. And if I'm him, I don't see how you turn that down. I mean, I think this is your home. This is the place where you have finally achieved what you've been trying to achieve. And I just don't, your team won 107 games last year. I just don't know how you walk away from this organization for a little bit more money. But in terms of your overall question, Brad, I think the veteran players want to sign now. I don't know. I don't know anything about anything when it comes to this stuff, but it just seems to me the chances of a labor stoppage or a play stoppage is low. It just seems like the two sides are more aligned than they have been in a while, that they want to get a deal done. But I imagine if you're a veteran player, you don't want to be caught in a situation where there is a work stoppage and you haven't signed yet, right? Because that is just going to create a really awkward situation once the contract is signed, because we might be, well into spring training or even into the regular season, and a lot of guys will just not have a contract done, and it's just not a good place to be. So that's why I think you probably see a lot of guys rushing to get things done now.
All right, I'm looking at the list here of the top starting pitchers in free agency. Scherzer is going to be at the top of everybody's list, but he's also 37 years old. You have Robbie Ray, Cy Young Award winner, who turned his career around last year at the age of 30, and Gausman, who will be, I think Gausman is currently 30. So those are your top three guys. So if you do not bring back Gausman, Do you look for another one of these top guys? Marcus Stroman is out there as well. Verlander's already been picked up. Kershaw probably not coming to the Giants. Syndergaard's already been signed. So a lot of those top guys, a few of them are already off the market. So it's kind of like Gausman is someone he's someone that you can work with. He's workable. He's going to be 30. He'll be 30 for the entire season. He'll turn 31 in January. I take that back. So still fairly young. If you give him a 4-year deal, the way that people take care of their bodies today, the way that they have all the coaches to help with the programs and off-season stuff, theoretically he could be a really good pitcher for the next 3 or 4 years. Whereas maybe in yesteryear, we've been kind of burned out by guys getting in, Barry Zito, Johnny Cueto. We just talked about Cueto as they get into that time, but it seems like the way that this team is built, they have a plan for stuff like this. So I am completely fine with Gausman coming back. I'm very interested to see what that money is, though, because if you are, I don't know who is on his radar. You mentioned the Blue Jays. Theoretically, they could go high with that 25 mark. And if the Giants are more in the 22 range, I could definitely see Gausman taking the higher value. So I think it is up to the Giants to kind of really be competitive there and not just think, we won 107 games. Why wouldn't he come back? So I do hope that they're competitive if that's the guy that they see as their top target, because they do have the money. So I do think that, there's a good chance that he comes back. I don't think any of these, the moves that they made today changes that one way or another. But here's one question that I want to ask all three of you, which is, because, and we're going to talk about Buster in a second, don't worry, but because we just lost, a great right-handed bat, if you feel confident in Logan Webb, and then they're talking about this Alex Cobb today as another guy who's possibly on their radar. If you feel confident with Webb as an ace, and you're comfortable with DeSclafani sliding back into that 2 slot like he was, for a good half of the year, maybe they throw some of that money at a right-handed bat, because there's tons of guys who are being targeted for the Giants as well. So Brad, if you could pick, not to say that they're not going to get both, they may get both, but if you're looking at if it's Gausman or it's Castellanos, like, are you choosing offense, or are you choosing guy who finished in the top 6 in the NL Cy Young?
The Giants are a club now that I think could afford both. I really think they're at that point, because I was kicking around the idea today. I thought, well, what about Gausman and Stroman? I mean, round out that nice pitching staff. But then at that point, then do you look at it and say, well, then Castellanos is off, Conforto's off, maybe Simeon's off. So I think the Giants are probably looking at Gausman or Stroman and adding a huge bat, like Simeon or Castellanos. I think the Giants are that club now that can do that, and they have to. I mean, look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers could sign Scherzer. They could go out and sign anybody they want. And at this point, the Giants have to continue to compete with that, because they don't want the wild card. They had a taste of the National League West title. They've had it now. So I think the wild card is not necessarily an option for the Giants going forward. They want that West title. I think they can sign both. I'd be happier, I think, with Gausman, because I know with Zadie's track record, he can find the guy who's kind of hanging out on the corner, slinging, I don't know, flipping the sign.
The Max Muncies of the world.
Or his arm is in a sling.
Yeah,
exactly. He's just standing there and says, we'll pitch for beer money.
Yeah, any sling, really. Mm-hmm. And he can sign him, and he'll hit 20 home runs, hit 270, get on base quite often. So I'm happier with having Gausman, but I think the Giants could really do both at this point.
That's a great point, because similarly how they found Lamont Wade last year, Zadie being Zadie.
Yeah.
So Matthew, not saying the Giants have to pick, but if it came to it where it's like stud pitcher, stud offensive player, your mentality, your way of watching baseball, what would you go with?
Well, they definitely need a right-handed bat, and they need a right-handed outfielder in particular. And so I think that you're going to see, I think the Castellanos, even the Semien, he's not an outfielder, but then there's the Confortos. So there's some right-handed power out there that I think that they will pursue. But even with today's signings, they still only have 100 million allocated on their budget, so on their payroll. So they've got a lot of money to play with. And I think that they're in a really good position. I wouldn't be surprised for them to see them go for if it's Gosman or someone else, but another a high $20 to $25 million pitcher. I don't see why not. They have the ability to do that. One of the other things that went under the radar is that they brought up Sean Jelly to the 40-man this week, obviously protect him from the Rule 5 draft. But as we know, if you're on the 40-man, you're going to play. And I think pretty much everybody on the 40-man this last year played. It was brought up to the major league club, and so Jelly is certainly an option for that number 5 spot. And if not right off of out of spring training, at some point I expect we'll see him. And so we've got a little bit of depth there. I think that they're also they're going to find their next DeSclafani. I mean, you win 107 games and you have the reputation the way the Giants do is for developing pitchers. You're going to have guys that are in that prove it to me stage. They're going to want to sign with the Giants. And so I think you're going to see some of those, that are in the, $3 to $5 million range that are going to, that we're going to see sign with the Giants. But I don't see why they can't do both. I mean, they've got enough money to be able to afford a power right-handed bat and another starting pitcher in my books.
Ben, I'm going to slightly adjust my question for you because Matthew mentioned Jelly. And in the back of your mind, you can say, well, if you lose out on a starting pitcher, I don't know. I don't think Jelly could replace Gosman, but if you lose out on somebody, you have this guy who you've been building up to come in at some point. Same thing can be said for Ramos, right? They've had Ramos kind of in waiting. He will probably at some point in 2022 make the team and play real baseball. Do you think that, would you be disappointed if they didn't add a right-handed bat, or would you sit back and go, well, let's play the long game and, Ramos is coming up? Like, how would you look at that situation?
Well, first of all, I think it's pronounced jelly. Jelly.
Is it really?
Okay, so no, it's not. It's not.
Jelly is a lot more fun.
I've got jelly. Jelly.
Sounds like throwing a punch.
I've got a good mnemonic for how to spell Yastrzemski, so I'm gonna find one for how to pronounce his name. I'm glad you asked me that question because I think everything that you guys have said sounds really smart. I do think the Giants have enough money to sign 2 big contracts. I also think that they're going to go after one more starter. And then after that, they're probably going to try to sign like 4 guys and really add depth and see, and hope that, a couple of those guys, prove themselves at AAA level and are an option.
Kazmir is still out there.
Right. And I think we're going to see more signings like that. But I think also the Giants have proven both by the changes that they made to the ballpark and then also just the changes that they made at the organizational level, they have proven that they are a great place for people to land if they're trying to revive or revitalize their career. So I think they're going to have a lot of people lining up to say, hey, I want to play for the San Francisco Giants at that level. So I think they'll have a lot of choices, and I think they will try to do something there. But I do think they're going to try to sign 2 more big guys. And if that's the case, one of them better be Nick Castellanos. Absolutely.
Yes.
That is, I mean, I don't know if he fits in at the clubhouse level, but he's not any more of a question mark in that regard than Sterling Marte, right? Which I know is another person that the Giants fans are really excited about. I think Nick Castellanos is a much better signing He's a right-handed power bat who would absolutely thrive at the current configuration of Oracle. I think he is a dynamic and exciting player. He's the kind of player that I want to see on the field, right? And so does that mesh with the Giants' style of play? I don't know, but I think they absolutely should be making a run at Nick Castellanos. That's the guy I want to see. That's the guy I want to see in a Giants uniform next year of all the free agents. Give me Nick Castellanos.
Yeah, that's a guy that Brad's been talking about for a while now.
Do
as
it.
well. And you mentioned Marte, you mentioned Castellanos. There is the we haven't figured out the first name pronunciation, Seiya Suzuki, who is out there and who is
I'll solve this problem.
Yeah, I was going to say we can just go ahead and ask it.
I need to see it spelled.
Seiya.
YA.
Seiya.
And the best thing about Suzuki is he's only 27 and he's already out there as a free agent, whereas most of these guys don't really get out there to be free agent until they're in their late 20s or early 30s.
Yeah. Bryce Harper was just a couple years too early for where we were in terms of building and everything else.
And they still almost got him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also you could I guess Conforto is out there. He's not as sexy as those other two guys. Chris Taylor also out there, also not as sexy as those other two guys. But yeah, I mean those are the types that it would seem that would fit the team. I like as much as I would love for them to go spend a ton of money on Marcus Semien, it doesn't feel like that's kind of the guy that the Giants would go after, but maybe they will. But the Seagers and the Correas and guys like that are probably not on the Giants' radar necessarily.
There's also Chris Taylor, that seems to be linked. Seems to be linked to the Giants. I know, the Dodger connection, but
yes.
It's one thing to be a Dodger, and then there are certain other Dodgers. Right? He's one of those other Dodgers.
Hershiser can be a Giant. Chris Taylor can be a Giant.
Yeah.
Right?
What?
No. What? I'm only that way with Justin Turner. If Justin Turner were linked to us, I would have a really, really hard time with that.
Well, then you just got to bring back. You just got to bring the two other Giants, the Brebbia, and then you just mix Turner in there, and then the Giants fans will never know that he's on the team.
That's right.
Because all these redheaded bearded guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have to mention a couple of other moves that not as happy. Jay Jackson, they traded Jay Jackson today for a player to be named later. They also
smart. That's classic Zaidi.
That is
wow.
Yeah. That's hey, we're gonna DFA this guy, but hey, if anybody wants him, we'll take a low-level draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. And they couldn't find a taker for Alex Dickerson, from what it seems like, because they DFA'd him. So they do lose a couple of guys. Now that's all about creating more space on this roster because they are adding to the roster. They are not, those are the reasons why these guys are not on the team anymore, because you need space for that 40-man.
Well, Dickerson, not yet, though, because if they just DFA'd him today, I think it's like a 48-hour process or so for him to get through, and then they could still trade him. Yeah. So, I mean, there could be somebody out there looking for Dickerson. So, yeah.
Right. And that may be why they didn't announce the Wood signing or,
True.
Because they want to figure out something with DeSclafani or with Dickerson, rather. So.
Yeah.
All right. Let's bring it to Posey now. Brad and I have had our long sessions. We've kind of thought about it long and hard and been like, okay, like, how do we deal with this? I don't think you guys have done that yet on your podcast.
No, Ben was in Hawaii and when it happened, and
didn't help.
We've had to go through those 7 stages of grief on our own. It's the denial was there at first, and then anger, and I haven't gotten to acceptance quite yet, to be honest. I think that it's hard to put into words. I think how much Buster felt he was the Giants, right? And when you thought of the Giants over the last decade, the constant of Buster Posey was, I think a privilege that few teams have ever had, particularly because of who he was as a person, but also the position that he played and the level that he played it. And, elite catchers are few and far between. And we were lucky enough to see him for over 10 years. And I feel like he is irreplaceable. So when we start talking about how do you replace Buster Posey, you don't. So the lineup will definitely be less because of him. And so that's going to hurt the team. But regardless of that, I'm going to miss, what he brought to the table every game. And, people were talking about their defining moments of Buster and remembering, the grand slam against Latos and, all these things that he did. My biggest memory of him is when Bryce Harper was hit by Strickland. And we all knew it was coming. And Bryce Harper goes racing out to tackle Strickland, and you see in the background Buster going and just standing there while this happens, and then eventually he kind of starts running out there. But I just, that was Buster, right?
Okay, but some people didn't like that. Some people were like, "Oh, he's not backing up his guy."
Because let's face it, Strickland was a dick, right? And
was
come
not.
on. I mean, that was a
Oh yeah, is backing up Strickland.
Yeah,
yeah. Come on.
I mean,
I was okay with
tell
that.
you everything you need to know about Strickland. Then
yes.
Wow. So first of all, I do want to apologize. You might somebody might have just seen a cattail.
That's why I closed my door, because
I had to escort mine out
here
before we
fighting.
I did
right
not
now.
realize that he was hiding where he was in his spot. His name is Wilson, by the way.
Wilson, nice.
He has he's about 10 years old. And there is another cat who is not in this room who's named Posey, who is a little bit younger actually than Wilson, but so you can see how I name my cats.
Yeah, there you go.
But wow, Matthew, he says like he was the San Francisco Giants in many ways. Do you remember a time before there was Buster Posey? I think. Obviously we do. Obviously there are legends amongst the San Francisco Giants, some of the greatest players to ever play the game. I think to Giants fans, Buster Posey will always have a different and special place. He was the guy that showed up to usher in the era where the Giants were the greatest team in baseball, and he was baseball's greatest player. And he did it with such grace and class that I think he was just on another level, right? As a baseball player. And he is one of those guys that was a legend, and you knew it when you saw him on the field, right? A lot of times you don't know it until, time has passed, right? Or it takes a while, or it kind of sneaks up on you, a la Brandon Crawford. Right. We all know it now, but it took a while for Crawford to get there. I mean, you kind of knew it with Buster the day he showed up. And, I think all of the monumental moments and his ups and downs in his career, they just all feel larger than they would for any other player. Right. Like we all know, we all remember the slide Cousins taking him out and breaking his leg, and that changed the game of baseball. Right. The game of baseball will never be the same because Buster Posey broke his leg, and it was just too much for the game to take. Here I'm getting choked up already. I can't even, I mean, it's a monumental, I don't want to say loss because, the Giants, first of all, the Giants take fantastic care of their players, and any Giants player that wants to come back can come back, and they will celebrate them. But it is a transition that I don't think it's going to be felt. I mean, it's going to be felt on the pitching staff. It's going to be felt on the way the other managers manage the game. I mean, even last year when Buster played 2/3 of the season, it changed the way other managers managed the game when Curt Cassalli started, because they knew that Buster was on the bench, right? It just, it just changes the game. He was a game changer. And I don't think there's another player like him from his era, so I'm just, I'm so bummed. But at the same time, when you look at it from a human perspective, I absolutely understand why he made that choice. I mean, I think it's absolutely the right choice for him to make at a personal level, and he's got nothing left to prove. And, I think 2021 was about proving to himself that he was still a great player, and he did that. And yeah.
Thank you guys for emoting on our show. I really appreciate you guys doing that. And Brad, before we move on, two quick things to get to. We don't want to take up too much time here of Matthew and Ben, but will the Giants fans give Joey Bart a chance? Is kind of what I wonder. Playing in the shadows of an all-timer going to be tough. And we all know, just based on the situation in Johnny Cueto last year, he already had a rough start behind the plate with someone who's such a veteran pitcher and probably a little cranky at times too. But Joey Bart's got big shoes to fill, but he was drafted to fill these shoes. Will the fans give Joey Bart a chance to do that next year?
They're going to give him a chance because he's going to crush the baseball when he gets a hold of it. But I don't think they're going to give him as much of a chance behind the plate, like you just alluded to. It's going to take a lot for Giants fans to trust Bart's pitch calling, him calling an entire game. It's going to take, I mean, look at Cassalli comes in and it was like 5 straight shutouts last year. So, I mean, there's not only just Posey's shoes to fill. If something happens and Bart goes out there in his first game, Giants pitchers give up 4 runs in the first inning, it's going to be a problem. But I think over time, I say by the All-Star break, fans will kind of settle in and things will be fine. But he will be, he'll be up with the big club. He's not going to be in AAA next year. It is his job to lose at this point. Can the Giants bring back Cassalli on a nice deal for another year or two? I think so. I think Cassalli really loves San Francisco.
Well,
so
he's under team control now. I mean, he's on
arbitration.
That's right. He's arbitration eligible.
That's right. He is arbitration eligible. So you guys know more about that type of stuff than I mean, when it comes to like
Brad was telling me, he's like, I listen to these guys, and they're really solid on this contract stuff and like on all these little nooks and crannies of stuff.
Hey, there's websites that
Fangraphs is a good place.
Track.
I go to Spot Track and I look at that every now, but I don't look at everybody. I can't. I just can't. But yeah. So Cassalli. So I mean, the combination of the two, I think it's going to be fine. I think they are going to give him a somewhat long leash. They know, and like we talked about this before, Garrett, there is absolutely no way Joey Bart can ever fill Buster Posey's shoes. It's just not possible. You have to start. I mean, even if he wins Rookie of the Year this year, I think he might still be eligible for that. Although,
he played the whole 2020 season.
Yeah, I was going to say 2020. I think kind of ruined that whole thing for him. So he can't even start out that way. He can't even. But say they go to the World Series next year and they win the World Series, and he leads the pitching staff, and there's a couple of shutouts in the playoffs, and he's behind the dish for that. Maybe, but still, there's no. I mean, it would have to be years and years and years before Giants fans say we're okay with this. I think the first 3 or 4 years are going to be rough for Bart. I hate to say it, but I think that's just the way it's going to roll.
All right, I would ask Matthew and Ben, but I want them to be able to take this to their podcast so that you guys can answer that Joey Bart question on your own podcast when you guys record again. Because I have 2 more topics. I want just quick hits. I want quick hits from all 4 of us.
Speed round. We do these.
Okay.
We're good. All right.
Brandon Crawford finishes 4th in the NL MVP ballot. Fair, perfect. Did you think he should do better, worse? Brad, quick thoughts.
I loved it. More first place votes than Fernando Tatis, correct?
Correct.
I believe.
Correct.
If I don't have the numbers in front of me,
you're right.
Absolutely love that. Better shortstop than Fernando Tatis can ever.
I'm a better shortstop than Fernando Tatis.
I think he just booted one.
Oh
yeah,
you're
we're
right.
talking.
You're right.
So, yes.
Yeah. You don't have to think. He did. He just
he
did.
He did. So yes, I love that. I think it could have even been third, but coming in fourth, I think that was fantastic. Well,
Matthew.
Agreed. He was never going to win. I feel like he was the most valuable player on the Giants this year, and I think fourth place was probably about right. I think the bigger question is, the thing to celebrate is Lamont Wade Jr. getting a 10th place, so which I thought was also appropriate. Go Bags, man, that was awesome.
I think Wade's vote was totally valid. Lamont Wade Jr. was in many ways the most valuable player for the Giants this year, which is stunning. But we needed those magical wins that he gave us, and so even though the Giants probably win 103 games without him, 104 games without him. Brandon Crawford, absolutely fourth place is an amazing accomplishment. Harper and Soto did it off of their stats. Tatis did it with his flash. Crawford did it with his defense and offense, and by playing on a great team. He was an all-around great player. I think it was probably his career season, and what a season! It was amazing. Absolutely deserved.
I'm in agreement with everybody. I just liked I liked Bags' reasoning for voting Crawford, but when you are the hometown beat writer and you vote for your guy, there's always going to be problems where people are going to homer this, homer that. It's like, no, he actually had a lot of good arguments. Okay, last question. We talk about this guy, the captain, Brandon Belt. Okay, so Brandon Belt accepts qualifying offer. He's only one of two players, I think, that accepted their qualifying offer. My hypothesis on this is that they looked at the market. They were looking for a 3-year deal, couldn't find a 3-year deal, decided to accept the Giants qualifying offer. Maybe it turns into a similar deal to Brandon Crawford, which I kind of imagine was probably out there already for Belt, but they took the chance that maybe there's a 3-year deal out there for Belt because he's a little bit younger. So I'm so happy that he's back. I would love to see what he can do on this team with the new park and play 140 games. I mean, come on.
Garrett's one of those guys.
Well, I mean, he did, right? If you go back,
Garrett's a glass half full kind of guy.
Well, the year before the
2019,
pandemic, he had 150 games or something. So I'm not even asking for 150. Give me 135. Give me 140. He can have the one goofy injury that happens when he's running out of ground ball and then he's out for 4 weeks.
He's going to fall out of bed and injure something. I mean, that's the way it's going to be this year.
But if you look at the last 2 years, his power numbers are through the roof. So let's have some more of that. Whatever he's been doing, let's do it again for another year. And I want to see what he can do. Maybe he can hit 35 bombs this year, hitting in the lineup. So Brandon Belt comes back. Just quick thoughts on if you guys think that he can continue the success of the last 2 years, or were those years outliers and he kind of goes back to what he was? Brad, we'll start with you.
I say you talked about it. We need a 30 home run guy. He's our 30 home run guy next year. I always talk about this too. I always tweet this out. There's a right side of the Belt Wars. There's a wrong side of the Belt Wars. We are on the right side of the Belt Wars. I'm not going to say which is the right or which is the wrong side. But I love the guy. He is the captain. This persona that he came up with this year was fantastic. I said on our last show that I think personally it was dire to get him back this season, because this was after Posey had announced the retirement. But I thought it was dire to get him back because you've got Crawford, you've got Belt, there's the cat, and you've got, and so you've got to have that that veteran leadership. I mean, Longoria has been around.
Hey,
Wilson.
I have a cat that looks exactly
furry.
like
He's furry
that.
like Brian Wilson.
Yeah, I've got a cat that looks exactly like that. Funniest thing. So yeah, I think it was dire that we got him back, and I'm glad he's back. You need that leadership in the clubhouse with Posey gone. Longoria is there. He hasn't been a Giant as long, even though he's an older guy. But you've got Crawford and you've got Belt, and those guys are going to help lead some of the younger guys that come up. So I thought it was fantastic.
I would agree. I think that yeah, I've been a big Belt fan forever. I think that we talked about it in our podcast that the Giants coaching staff finally came, basically the Giants coaching staff came and found in Belt what they were wanting all along. And Belt hit 29 home runs in less than 100 games last year. So absolutely, he is our 330 home run guy. I feel like he will. Why not? I think he's got to stay healthy. That's always a big big if with Brandon Belt. But I'm glad he's back. He's so much more than just than home runs. He's he's the leader of the team, and I'm excited. Side note, for Halloween, I went as Brandon Belt for Halloween. And I had a giraffe costume, and I had the Giants jersey with the big C on electrical tape on it, the whole yard. So
wait, did you slump your shoulders as you walked?
Of course.
There we go.
Of course, yeah.
We're talking about. All right, Ben, you're going to close. You're going to close it down for us.
Wilson and I are going to close this out.
Ben and Wilson. Here we go.
I would say so. Brad and I are very aligned. Brad, I like you a lot, man. I think with Buster retiring, Brandon Belt coming back was huge for the clubhouse.
Yeah,
I think what the Giants fans saw this year with the captaincy and everything else that he did, I think probably personified what he'd been doing all along. Right. And was just an extra element to making this team be a great place to be and for where players can feel loose and taken care of. But here's what I'm going to say about Brandon Belt. I'm just going to say something super controversial just to stoke the Brandon Belt wars. Second best first baseman in San Francisco Giants history.
Wow.
Take that, Belt haters.
Yeah.
Come at me. Come at me.
Okay, so
on Twitter?
Which first baseman, which one of the two greats did I just disparage?
I feel like you dropped Will Clark.
I think so.
Yeah.
I just dropped the Thriller for sure. For sure, I dropped the
Thriller.
I can't. No. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's
wow.
what it is. Yes, I just said it. I said it. You heard it.
Mic drop.
That's
on
what
the last.
That's what I think about Brandon Belt.
The last topic, you just mic dropped it.
Yeah.
No, guys. So, I want to say thank you guys for jumping on. We get to. Brad and I can go all day. Brad and I know each other from college, and this kind of is our. Instead of doing a phone call or a text chat, like this is our time that we get to hang out together. And so happy that you guys got to join in because, like I said, we've only had a few guests. You guys fit into what we enjoy about this stuff perfectly. We couldn't have asked for better guests. Everybody listening, click over to however you listen to your podcasts, look up Giant Cocktails, download it, subscribe, give these guys 5 stars, do the same thing with us, Thompson to Clark. And the whole Giants ecosystem of podcasts is in good hands with you guys. So really appreciate you guys jumping on.
Thanks for having us. That's awesome.
And I think that's going to be it. Any last plugs? You guys want to plug anything? Outside of the socials. I mean, socials is all Giant Cocktails as well.
Yep. Instagram, Twitter at Giant Cocktails. But no, yeah, thanks for having us. We've really enjoyed it. It's great to meet other Giants fans and people who are out there spread the word. So thank you so much. And Wilson's ready for food.
Yeah,
I think.
Thank you, Wilson. I've got one more thing. I actually got, and we're not doing this live. Sometimes we do the show live, but I actually got a text from a friend of ours who listens to the show. He's a big Yankees fan, and he had this to say. He said, "The Disco and Wood deals feel like steals given the other pitching deals so far this winter. I like Cashman, but it's hard not to be jealous of Farhan and what he's doing."
There you go.
There you go.
The
So
Giants gave
that's
those
from the
guys.
Yankees, man.
The Giants gave those guys a chance when nobody else would even look at them.
Yeah.
And they gave them a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
So this is what it's like to be a Giants fan now.
Okay,
which
so
is
and this goes
fantastic.
back to what you guys are saying, which is you can entrust that you come to San Francisco, they give you a shot and you prove yourself and you can actually you get something out of it. So that is good for the team when it comes to other free agents who do want to come here. So
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of reasons why people don't want to sign with San Francisco, right? For reasons that I think fans don't think about. It's too far away. The plane flights are too long. The taxes are too high. The ballpark is too weird. It's too right-hander.
It's expensive as hell to live out here.
Yeah, all of those things. And one thing I'll mention to Kevin Gossman, Canadian taxes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You think
Kevin
California
Gossman.
taxes are bad, my friend?
Wait till you get that socialized healthcare. Boy,
Yeah.
that
There
doesn't
you
come
go.
without a price.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Thank you to Matthew and Ben of Giant Cocktails Podcast. Thank you to Brad. I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.